Hey Bookworms, it's Jade from Bedtime Bookworm and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm here to bring you my spoiler-free review of The Path of Daggers by Robert Jordan, which is the 8th book in the Wheel of Time series. This review is mostly intended for people who have read the first 7 books and are considering continuing on in the series, but maybe they just want to check out a review or know what to expect in the next book. If you've already read The Path of Daggers and you're more interested in my spoilery thoughts on the book, then I recommend checking out my book diary. So I'm going to start the review by just giving you my rating. I gave The Path of Daggers 4 out of 5 stars. And for reference, every other book in the series that I've read so far has been a 5 out of 5 stars. Slight disclaimer in that this is my favorite series, so that's one of the reasons why I rate it so highly, but I truly have really enjoyed all the books in the series. Sadly, The Path of Daggers has definitely been my least favorite out of the ones that I've read so far, and I know that I'm not alone in that opinion. We're starting to get into the part of the series that is known as the slog, and I definitely felt the pace was very slow in this book. There were a lot of scenes of information being transferred from one character to another. There were also a lot of minor characters being introduced or being reintroduced, and a lot of them with political motives that I felt like maybe I wasn't completely grasping at the time of reading. I am filming this review after I've already read the following book, Winter's Heart, because as you might know, I recently moved and just my schedule's been a little bit crazy and I haven't had time to sit down and film this video. The reason I mention that is because now that I've read Winter's Heart, I can see that many of the scenes in The Path of Daggers serve as setup for things that happen in Winter's Heart. But before you read Winter's Heart, you wouldn't really know that. And of course, that's not an excuse for this book to be slow. A few of the other books prior to this one have had slow parts to them, but it was never the whole book being so slow as this one was. I truly feel that the other books had explosive endings, and that explosive ending would make up for any slow bits that I had to read to get to that ending. But in The Path of Daggers, there really isn't that awesome of an ending. And it was kind of anticlimactic. I was expecting something really exciting at the end, and I mean, something happened, but it wasn't the big ending that I've come to expect from the Wheel of Time books. I think part of the issue in this book is the fact that at this point we are juggling so many characters. Our 7 main characters are mostly split up. And so it becomes really hard to juggle all of these different storylines without making the story feel slow. The way Robert Jordan has kind of dealt with it is that, and this isn't the first book that this has happened in, but there are, some point of views that are missing, or there's only 1 or 2 chapters in some point of views. And I will say that this book was lacking in some of my favorite characters' point of views. It makes me think a little bit about George R.R. Martin and the Song of Ice and Fire series, and how, I don't remember which books it was, but there's a couple books where he said they are taking place concurrently, as far as timeline, but they follow separate characters. So, he had one book that focused on, these main characters, and then the next book was taking place over the same time period, but over these other main characters. I personally wasn't a fan of that. I just found it really confusing when I was reading it, trying to remember what was happening at what time period as far as what was going on with other characters. I just had a really hard time lining it up, and in that sense, I'm glad that Robert Jordan didn't do that. I mean, he kind of did that because he did leave out certain characters from this book, but it wasn't without rhyme or reason. It was more that those characters weren't doing anything that important during the time period that this book takes place in. So in that way, it makes sense, and I'm glad that he did it that way over splitting up the POVs and having a confusing timeline. But I wish that there was a way that we could have seen from all the characters and for all of the characters to be doing something interesting. That way the pacing doesn't feel so slow, but I also wouldn't want the book to be any longer than it is. I know that's probably asking for a lot, you can't have your cake and eat it too sort of thing. All right, so those are my thoughts on The Path of Daggers. Overall, there was a pacing issue. It was not as exciting and as eventful as the other books. There wasn't that explosive ending. I know a lot of what I just said sounded pretty negative, but I did still really enjoy reading this book. It just didn't live up to the other books, if that makes sense. To me, the series is just too much of a masterpiece for me to give any of the books less than 4 stars, but I will admit that this was the weakest out of the series so far. If you have read The Path of Daggers, I would love to know if you agree or don't agree down in the comment section, but please keep it spoiler-free. If you want to talk about spoiler things, head over to my book diary and you can leave spoilers in that comment section. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you like bookish content. I post 1 to 2 times a week. That is all I have for now. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bookworms, keep reading. Bye. The reason why I mentioned that is because but it was never the whole book being as slow, but it was never the whole book point of views that are missing, and some of the, or they only have like 1 or 2 sounds really negative, but I still really did enjoy the book. It was, bye.